The unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, we can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So, I'm just going to give a little introduction this evening to the Denkoroku, which is what we're going to be looking at this week. Great Master Keizan. It's his masterwork, actually. He didn't write a whole lot. He's not like Great Master Dogen, who wrote this huge Shobogenzo. But the Denkoroku is a really beautiful work, and it's that, along with the Shobogenzo, they're considered the most important of the writings in our Soto Zen tradition. So I thought it would be nice to explore it a little bit. And I'm using Reverend Master Hubert's translation because we all have access to it. It's on the internet. And we have copies of it up in the guest house you're welcome to borrow or take. And I know it's mainly I'm using it because it's the best translation, the one I like the best that I've seen. It's accessible. It's for people. It's for us. It's for people who are training, and has a lovely human quality that he has in his translations. So that's what I'm going to use. It speaks to the heart of training, as it were. And as we know, the Denkoroku is the written record of talks that Great Master Keizan gave to his monks about the succession of ancestors from Shakyamuni Buddha down to Kohen-jo, his grandfather, Keizan's grandfather in the Dharma. And so Keizan's talking to his community of monks over a period of probably many months. And since he was talking to monks, one might think it's really just for monks, not really for anybody else, just, Because he often says, "Oh, monks," because that's who he's talking to, but it's not just for monks. It's for everybody. It's for all of us. We don't have to be monks. We don't have to have a special master-disciple relationship such as they all had with their masters and disciples. We can read the Denkoroku, we can practice it, we can understand it for ourselves, and derive great benefit from it. It's for all of us. And my intention this week is to kind of make this clear, that this is for us. Of course, we're all here. We're the ones who want to study the Denkoroku, so I'm kind of preaching to the converted, but still, I think often people feel a little bit intimidated by it. They think, well, it's for advanced people, not for me. Or it's people who've had some spiritual experience, i.e., not for me. Or people who completely understand it, not for me. But actually, it's for all of us, because you can cut yourself off from something that way, thinking, well, it's too advanced for me, or it's too difficult, or I don't really understand it, or I feel a little bit kind of, intimidated by the whole thing. But actually, in some ways, it's straightforward. Lots of it I don't understand. But something speaks to the heart, beyond this little brain which is clueless. Or you might think, I understand what Keizan's talking about. Oh yes, I know this for myself. Well, we might know it for ourselves. And yet there's always more. If we think, oh yes, I've completely understood the Buddha Dharma, I know what he's talking about, I'm like this myself, we might be missing something. Because I don't think really any of us could say, oh yes, I've completely penetrated to the depths of what Great Master Keizan's talking about. He'll say things like, well, even if you've gone beyond the Buddhas and ancestors and have gone beyond this and the other thing, you've seen all your past lives and you've done all this stuff, even so, if you haven't done this, you're not there at all. And you sort of think, oh God, because you don't feel like you've done any of this stuff. But don't worry, because actually it's still for us. He's pointing to something beyond my experience anyway, and yet something in us understands it and opens up to it. And that's what we're going to do, hopefully. So, the Denkoroku is partly an expression of gratitude, I think, on Keizan's part, to all those ancestors in our tradition, human beings like us, who trained themselves. Each of them had a teacher and learned from them, and then passed down that to somebody else. Every morning we recite the ancestral line in gratitude and veneration to these people. But they're not the only ones who received the Dharma. It's not like they were the only people who received something that nobody else had. There were lots of disciples. Many of these masters had a whole bunch of disciples. Lots of lay trainees, lots of monks, lots of different branches of Buddhism. And they're all like family trees. They're spread out this way and they're spread out that way. But we have this one-to-one master-disciple relationship that we trace back. But it doesn't mean only these people had something that nobody else had. It's just that they're our ancestors, they're our family. Passed down from, as they say, warm hand to warm hand. A lovely expression. Human beings. And so to them we have a special, particular debt of gratitude because they're our ancestors in the Dharma. They're not different from everybody else. They're ours. And they're all human beings with their own foibles and weaknesses and failings and strengths. Our family. Well, sometimes they seem to be kind of more than human, as we read about them. The Indian ancestors in particular, some of them have special powers, they're born wearing the kesa, or they have all sorts of auspicious signs associated with their birth, or have miraculous powers, all kinds of things. Understanding the scriptures from an early age and praising the Buddha from the age of, 2 or something, and you think, crikey, these are not like us. They're not like that. And some of these things may be true, and some of them may be more symbolic, and we don't rightly know. Sometimes Rev. Master Hubert will point out a meaning, like a spiritual meaning of something. It seems miraculous. And so maybe sometimes it's a miraculous thing, and sometimes it may be pointing to something spiritual. But actually, we don't have to worry. We don't have to try and figure out, does this person really change from a dragon into a young woman, into a bug or whatever, or not? We don't know. We weren't there. It was a long time ago. And we don't have to worry. Buddhism is full of miraculous stories and things. And we don't have to worry about them. We don't have to believe them or disbelieve them. We can just take them and use them to help us, because the whole purpose is to teach us. They weren't superhuman beings unlike us. As Dogen says, they in the past were as we are now, and we will be as they in the future. They weren't different from us. They weren't some supermen, superwomen, super beings, and that we can't possibly aspire to what they realized. Because otherwise, what would be the point in writing about them? There would be some godlike beings, oh great, okay, so what am I, There are people like us. And Keizan's always pointing this out. In the whole of the Denkoroku, he's always saying, you are like these people. You have exactly the same potential as these people. You've just got to get going and train like mad, because that's the thing. You've got to work hard on your practice, and that is what he's constantly pointing to. Not that they had something we don't have, or that we have to be intimidated, but we also are like them. We have our own weaknesses, foibles, difficulties, and things that we can really make use of to help us. Now, scholars tell us that Keizan took the information about people, the biographical little story they have about each ancestor, from old texts, old Chinese texts about the ancestors. And some of the information is very sketchy, especially the Indian ancestors, because the Chinese didn't know much about the Indian ancestors, and nor do we really. And some scholars say that the ancestral line really was kind of patched together. It wasn't really one to one to one to one, that people just kind of got all these venerable monks and put them in some kind of a line. We don't rightly know. Maybe it's so. Sometimes scholars say things and you think, okay, and sometimes you think, I don't know about that. We just don't know. But we don't, again, we don't have to worry. Sometimes they say, they were just trying to make Zen look respectable, because the Chinese had this great love of lineage. So if you had this nice lineage, Zen would be respectable, along with all the other sects. We wanted to be respectable. But I don't think Great Master Keizan is just trying to be respectable. I really don't, and I'm sure you don't either. As they say, it's true whether or not it happened, because there's truth running throughout the whole of the Denkoroku. Even if all the stories are not the case. Many of these people did exist. People say that Bodhidharma didn't exist, Huineng didn't exist, somebody else wrote the Platform Sutra. I don't think so. There we go. We don't completely know, but it doesn't actually matter, because it's true whether or not it happened, which means the truth is deeper than, did somebody do this, did they do that, did they have these little conversations? Probably not, possibly not. How would we know? But Keizan is not just trying to justify the sort of Zen lineage, he's using it as a vehicle for teaching, very obviously. All these stories are there to teach us how to train, how to relinquish our attachment to ourself, our views and our ideas, and find something greater, each one. So we don't have to worry about whether they're literally true or not. They're to teach us, and that's what matters. So, the record of the transmission of the light, that's what Denkoroku means. The record of the transmission of the light of Buddha nature that we all have. And so you think, okay, the transmission of the light, what is it that's passed down from master to disciple? Are they handing something down? Some secret, special, mysterious thing that only certain people have, and we of course don't have it? I don't think so. It's not that. Because Keizan constantly says, you have it too. We have it too. It's not that this is mysterious, secret thing passed down that nobody else had. Otherwise, why bother again? We all have Buddha nature. We all have that light, and we can all awaken to it. And what he's trying to do is show us how to do that, how to find it for ourselves. We don't have to feel that they will have something we don't have, because that is not the case. And in each case, each of the chapters in the Denkoroku, the disciple trains himself for many years, or herself, sometimes they're women. But sometimes they do this training before they wake up, or they realize truth, and sometimes after. Sometimes they awaken before they even meet their master. Sometimes the master points something out, and that helps the disciple to awaken. But sometimes not. Sometimes they go off and awaken by themselves to some extent. Very often there's some kind of exchange that awakens the disciple, but quite often not. So it's not the fact that the master is passing on some secret thing to the disciple, It's not that. He's helping the disciple to wake up for themselves. And that's what he's trying to do for us. They're the ones who do the work. The disciple does the work, not the master giving him something or her something. It's the disciple who says, I'm going to do this. And I will give myself wholeheartedly to it. And it's that commitment and that faith that helps them to do that. It's not that the master is giving them something. They're encouraging them, they're pointing them in the right direction. They may, say something that helps the person wake up. But those years of training, that really do it. Those years of training, either before or after. Because sometimes people awaken very early in their training. They still have to do the work. We still have to work on our selfishness, on our greed, our views, our endless opinions about everything. We still have to do the work no matter who we are. they don't have something we don't have. And Keizan says this over and over again. There's not something that we don't have and that we can't do. We just need to do the work with faith and commitment. And I keep saying this, but I think it's really important that we know that we're not lacking something, that they weren't some special beings with something that we don't have. They were human beings, just like us. Reverend Master Jiyu constantly emphasized her humanity. She was always a human being. She would say, I am not a saint, and she would make this very clear. And this is her kind of inheritance that she's passed down to us. This human aspect. We train as human beings, not as super people. But we all have our own proclivities, our weaknesses, our strengths, our faith, our doubt, all the things we have, our history. Just like them, we all have our own human context. Because how else could it be? How could you possibly train if you couldn't just be a human being training in a human body? And Reverend Master Hubert, titles his chapters things like the Sainted Ananda, the Sainted Kabimora, especially the Indian ancestors. This is a term of veneration. It doesn't mean these people were something we're not, or something separate. We venerate them because they're our ancestors. We have that gratitude to them. They came long before us. They handed the Dharma down to us. That is why we say the Sainted Ananda. We don't usually call them that, but in the Denkoroku he's done that. And it's really nice because each of them has that stature for us, but not because they were something we are not. It's because we venerate them, we're grateful to them. That's why. So when I read the Denkoroku myself, I find it works a lot better if I kind of read through it fairly quickly and just let it flow through. If I try and figure it out, I'm baffled half the time. I think, what? But if I just put aside that mind that's trying to figure everything out and just read it and let it flow through, I find it works a lot better. It just somehow, it awakens something in the heart that bypasses the little intellect that's sort of panting along behind thinking, what? What does that mean? It's, rather than stopping, because it's a flow, the flow of Buddha nature, the flow of the chapters, there's something about it that is really beautiful, and it evokes something deep within us when we just get out of its way. The unbroken flow that comes through. Because Keizan's constantly trying to shake us loose from our stuckness, our little views, our self, and with the ancestors too. Each of them is sort of stuck in something, and they're shaken loose, either by their teacher or by something that happened or by just the years of training. And Keizan's doing that with us, trying to shake us loose from our views, our opinions, our idea of what I am, all these different things we have, our past, our feelings about ourselves, or what we think training is, and so forth. Our ideas about karma, life and death, what training is and what it isn't, what Buddha nature is and what it isn't. Constantly trying to shake us loose, but not bind us. He's loosening something. He's not tying us down or boxing it into some kind of definition. He's opening things up. Because all the things he talks about, all the beings, or the ancestors, or their situations, or those conversations they have, they're all embraced within Buddha nature, within what Keizan's pointing to. Pointing out to us. So trying to figure it all out doesn't work. It just confuses us. But if we just let it flow through, and entrust ourselves actually to the bigger picture, and trust ourselves to the text, to Keizan, it works a whole lot better. It's more a practice of faith than of intellect, really. Now, Reverend Master Jiyu said that at some point, one should read all the poems. Each chapter has a poem at the end. That one should read all those poems in sequence. She said it's like one long rolling wheel of the eternal, one long rolling wheel of Buddha nature, or the flow of Buddha nature. And so, somebody made us a copy of all these poems. It might have been from Thros, it might have been from somebody else. We have different versions of where this came from, but somehow miraculously we have all these poems in one form together, and we have a copy for each of you. You may already have them, but if you read them, you really get the sense of the Denkoroku. You get the sense of what Keizan's trying to do, because it goes beyond figuring things out. Just these poems, reading them all one after the other. You don't have to understand them or try and figure out what is this cloth-like strip, or what is this, fire, what does it mean? You don't have to worry. Just read them and read them again and let them just flow through, because they speak to something in the heart that is beyond our poor little brain. And that really kind of points us back to what this whole thing is about, much more than the individual beings, in a sense. Although they're human beings, it takes place within the context of human beings like us. And yet there's that wonderful flow that encompasses all of it, encompasses all of us. And that is what we're trying to open up to. So we don't have to worry about understanding it all. We don't have to worry that we worry about anything, actually. We just open up to it. So just be at ease. Just be at ease and enjoy this retreat. So each day I'll be talking about one of the ancestors, and I've chosen some of the Indian ancestors. It could be anybody, actually. It doesn't matter, in a sense, which chapters you talk about, because they're all, in a sense, essentially the same story. Just somebody relinquishing that, gripping onto something, gripping onto their view or their self or whatever it might be, and finding the great matter. And that is what we're trying to do. So tomorrow I will talk about Kumarata. Kumarata. I get them all mixed up. There's Kabimora, Kumarata, Kanadaiba, and then there's all the, so I have to think, okay, it is Kumarata, right. Tomorrow's Kumarata. Okay. If you want to read it, you're welcome, but you don't have to, because in a sense it's beyond the person himself. But sometimes it's nice to read it ahead of time. So thank you.